Hi, it's Martin Waxman for Inside PR and PRSA at the Public Relations Society of America's International Conference in San Francisco. And I'm happy to be talking with my friend Shonali Burke.
Hey, Martin.
Good to see you. Shonali is the VP Digital and Marketing at MSL Washington and also a blogger at Waxing and Lyrical, and also has a session here at the conference. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your session?
My session is called Working Magic with Measurement, and it's a topic that I'm very passionate about because we as PR professionals are tasked with communicating with our organizations, our clients' audiences. But if we don't know what we're actually trying to achieve via that communication, then it's tough for us to know whether we actually achieved our goals or not. And I think a lot of PR professionals get frightened by measurement. They say, I'm not a math person. I didn't come into PR to do math. But the truth is that we're all math people. We all have to run our households. We all deal with finances and numbers in some way, shape, or form. It's just a question of shifting one's mindset a bit and looking at measurement from an outcome point of view as opposed to just looking at what you're doing and putting out there from an output point of view. That's nothing new. It's something PR practitioners who have kind of led the field in measurement thinking have been talking about for years and years. But it's really time to bring it to the next level almost so that it becomes mainstream and it's not just a select few who are doing measurement the right way from an outcome-based using an outcome-based model. So that is what I talk about, and I share some case studies of organizations that I've worked with over the years where by doing very simple things, we not only improved our communications, but we actually helped to achieve and support business outcomes. So to me, that's magic, and that helps us show our colleagues that we're doing a good job, and hopefully that's what people will take away from my measurement session.
I have to ask you about advertising equivalency. What advice do you have for an agency who has a client that says, we want to see ad equivalency?
Number one, if the client's asking for it, you have to give it to them. But I think if you can also start trying to include other measures and say, well, okay, you want the AVE, well, here's the AVE. What about considering some of these other things as well? Most of the time they'll say, okay, if they're not being put out by it, if they're not having to spend any extra money, they'll say, sure, why not? And what I encourage people to do is try and kind of do their own little test case. And if they can show by measuring something else that they were actually able to make a correlation to business outcomes, which is actually helping your client do their job better. If you can help your client do their job better and impress their boss, you're golden. So you don't necessarily have to say, no, I'm not going to do AVE, because let's face it, a lot of agencies can't do that. What are you going to do? Risk all of your business because you're not going to do AVE? But if you can start bringing in additional measures and helping to educate your client, and when the time is right, say, by the way, this is what I tested the other day, would you be interested in taking a look? I think a lot of it is how you put yourself across as well and how you ask the question. So if you ask the question right, you might get the answer you're looking for.
So looking ahead, we live in a changing world. What are three trends or three issues that you think communicators should be paying attention to?
Well, one, of course, is measurement. And with analytics becoming so all-pervading, it's tough to get away from. So I think those communicators who have not started educating themselves about analytics, especially on the website of things, because it's so easy to start putting measures in place where you can actually track actions all the way through to desired outcomes on a communication level and then correlate that to business. So that's definitely number one. Number two, and people have talked a lot about this at the conference, and storytelling is one of the dominant themes. When Biz spoke in his keynote session and somebody asked him, what do you think is the future of PR? He said, well, I think it's moving more towards storytelling and organizations humanizing themselves. Now, I personally think PR has always been about storytelling, but I think what's happened is that professionals and organizations got lost in the stuff around the storytelling and what they told their stories with, and they almost had tunnel vision. And it's time to let that go. So it's time to get back to what PR is really about. And the third thing that I think is fascinating is because of social media, There is now a community management and a community building element to mainstream public relations that was not as important before. You know, you still had the community relations function, but it was a separate department. And in many organizations it still is, because there are a lot of activities associated specifically with that function. But for PR professionals, because you can talk directly to your end audience or your client's end audience through social, you have to build a community. Because unless you get that community in place, when your client or your organization needs help telling its story, you're not going to have anyone to do it for you. So to me, that community management element is really, really important, and I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger over the next several years, and I personally love it. I think, you know, if you can get the community to tell your story for you, you're golden.
So waxingunlyrical.com, your blog, and if you haven't read it, I would say definitely read it, and thank you, Shonali, for
Thanks so
talking.
much, Martin.